Hello students, welcome to this program titled Basic Education. The objectives set for the present session are to know about the M.K. Gandhi, to understand the Gandhian scheme of education, to know the historical background of basic education, to know the fundamentals of basic education. Mahatma Gandhi was born on 2nd October 1869 at Porbandar in Gujarat. His father was a Diwan of Rajkot. After completing his studies up to metric, he went to England for studying law. In 1893, he went to South Africa as legal advisor. In 1941, Gandhiji returned to India and continued educational experiments for a short time at Sabarmati and Sevagram. It was here that Gandhiji conceived the idea of his new system of education. Gandhiji evolved a philosophy of education as the dynamic side of his philosophy of life. He viewed education as a potent instrument of social reconstruction. On account of his new scheme of education known as basic education, Gandhiji is considered as a starting point of modern education theory and practice of the East. Now the works of Mahatma Gandhi. Hind Swaraj. It is his first and complete conception of the ideal Indian nation in all phases of life activity. Second, My Experiment with Truth. This is an autobiography from his childhood to his active participation into the Indian struggle for freedom. It also includes his experiments in education at Tolstoy Farm in South Africa. Now the meaning of education as per Gandhi. Gandhiji observes, by education I mean an all-round drawing out of the best in child and man, body, mind and spirit. Literacy is neither the beginning nor the end of education. It's only a means through which man and women can be educated. Now, how Gandhiji summed up his idea of true education. First, education is development. All-round development implies harmonious development, drawing out of the best, recognizes a great potentiality coiled up in the child which can be realized and developed to its perfection through education. It is the development of human personality in terms of physical, intellectual and spiritual aspects. Education should take care of whole child, the human personality. It should be the function of education to bring about a harmonious development of all the aspects of human personality so that it can grow to its highest stature and serve the society and its best. Second, education is not literacy. Gandhiji did not favor teaching and learning of 3 R's, as literacy in itself is no education. Literacy is just a means of education. He emphasized the development of head, hand and health. Next, Gandhiji believed that education should transmit the cultural heritage and refine and enrich it for the benefit of posterity. However, education has to be life itself and through life. Now the basic education and its historical background. Basic education was advocated by M.K. Gandhi in 1937. M.K. Gandhi published an article on basic education in Harijan in July 1937. Shortly after the publication of the article on basic education in Harijan in 1937, a conference was held with Dr. Zakir Hussain as the chairman for the preparation of tentative scheme syllabus for basic education. Dr. Zakir Hussain examined the scheme for the first time and placed his findings before the Indian National Congress at its Haripura session in February 1938. This was approved with a slight difference of emphasis on the self-supporting aspect. The Central Advisory Board of Education made an inquiry into the working of basic education under the chairmanship of B.G. Kheer in January 1939. The All Indian Education Board, known as Hindustani Talimi Sangh, came into being at Segon, Wardha, Madhya Pradesh in April 1939. The first All India Basic Education Conference was held in December 1940. It passed a resolution that English should not be taught for the first 7 years of education, except for those whose mother tongue is English. The second All India Basic Education Conference was held in April 1941. It noted that the progress of basic education was slow due to Second World War. The Quit India movement was launched on August 9, 1942. Gandhiji was imprisoned and the basic education receded to the background. On his release, he came out with a new vision of Nai Talim, education for life and through life. Education was to be coextensive with life. The purpose was to lead a balanced and harmonious life. Cleanness and health, citizenship, work and worship, play and recreation were organized in an integral way into a system of education. The All India Basic Education Conference was held at Sevagram in 1945. This was inaugurated by Gandhi and it assisted the progress of basic education. In the preceding years, as well as chartered a plan for basic education, extending to 4 states: community orientation for basic education, pre-basic education, basic education and post-basic education. Even after independence, April 1948, an All India Basic Education Conference was held at Bikram in Bihar, which reiterated its faith in the efficacy of basic education. The term basic is used to convey meaning in the context like: first, education is basic because it involves basic necessities of life like food, shelter and clothing. Second, education is linked with basic urge for the learners at the age for creative work. Third, education should be given to every child up to the level called as basic education level, irrespective of caste, creed or color. Next, education should be based upon nature and interest of the learner. The selection of activities for education should be linked with basic nature. Education should be based upon Indian culture. Now we'll discuss characteristics of Gandhian educational plan. Gandhiji's educational plan exhibits all the major qualities found in the Western educational patterns. So, while evaluating his plan, the points that must be kept in mind are: first, naturalism. Gandhiji's educational philosophy gives due recognition to the biological naturalism because it lays stress on man's complete development. Like Rousseau, Gandhiji revolted against the existing pattern of education and suggested the establishment of new system of education. He laid more stress on the child's environment than on books. He wanted to give an indigenous touch to education and make it capable of achieving independence and naturalness. But at the same time, he did not neglect discipline. His education is centered around the child, not around the textbooks. Second, idealism. On the one hand, one finds a strong element of realism in Gandhian's philosophy of education, but on the other, it also exhibits some signs of idealism. There is no denying that he was always an idealist because he always was a religious individual. He felt that the aim of man's life was realization of God, and that's why he stressed the importance of moral and religious education. He preached that one must indulge in service, sacrifice, and contemplation in order to achieve self-realization. Gandhiji's education philosophy shows all the finest elements of idealism, and while he does not restrict the scope of physical education, his attention is mainly given to spiritual training. He wanted to use education as a means of developing a harmonized personality in the child. Third, pragmatism. Despite his inclination to idealism, Gandhiji always attended to the practical and pragmatic aspect of education. That's why he entitled his autobiography, My Experiment with Truth. He was an experimenter in every sphere of life. He accepted no truth as absolute. For him, God was the only absolute entity. In keeping with the pragmatic tradition, he also believed that the child should gather for himself all the knowledge from the environment and select from it that which he could put to his use in later life. The pattern of education suggested by him compares in many respects with that suggested by the pragmatists. Both stress the importance of interests and activities and the need for variety in the subjects taught to the educand. Like Dewey, Gandhiji also felt that the child should learn through actual work. Besides, he also agreed with Dewey that education should seek to establish the democratic values in life. In short, he wanted to relate education to life as far as possible. Now, the fundamentals of basic education. Through this scheme of education, Gandhiji wanted to develop those qualities in future citizens of India which he considered necessary for building a non-violent society. His system of education wanted to root out exploitation and centralization in society and create a non-violent social order. In 1937, Gandhiji evolved a scheme popularly known as the Varda scheme of basic education. This Varda scheme was based on same principles of education which were listed by Gandhiji in a paper in 1932 in Yerwada jail. The highlights are like: first, free compulsory education. Mahatma Gandhi asserted that within the age 7 and 14, education be free, compulsory and universal. As a concession, however, girls, if their guardians so desire, could be withdrawn from the school after their 12th year. During this period of 7 years, Gandhiji planned to include primary, middle and high school education. He stated that primary education was the minimum which must be given to all. Hence, he simply emphasized minimum universal education, which he considered indispensable for the successful working of democracy. Second, mother tongue to be the medium of instruction. Gandhiji is a great champion of mother tongue. He stressed that mother tongue should be the medium of instruction. He believed that no real education is possible through a foreign medium. The foreign language causes brain flag, stifles all originality, puts undue strain on the nerves of our children, and makes them only crammers. On the other hand, the mother tongue will help the child to think quickly, to express easily and freely, and to bring out clarity of ideas. It will introduce the child to the rich heritage of his ancient culture. Third, craft as the center of education. Education should center round some craft on productive work. All subjects like history, geography, arithmetics, science, language, music, painting, etc. should be correlated with craft. By teaching craft, Gandhi's object was not to produce craftsmen, but he wanted to exploit the craft for the educative purposes. Craft-centered education will develop certain qualities of the head and heart. It will bring into play cooperative activity, dignity of labor, initiative responsibility, emotional catharsis, and equalization of classes. The craft in basic education is to be chosen keeping in view the local needs and harmony with the local environment. The thinking skills, observation skills, and the physical skills are properly correlated. Here knowledge is related to life, it's concrete and real. Next, self-supporting element. Varda's scheme of education is based on the principle learn while you earn and earn while you learn. In a poor country like India, where it's not possible to provide the heavy educational budgets, self-sufficiency is the best solution. Considering the financial and political conditions of the country, this was a welcome measure. It supports both the educative process and the child in later life. To Gandhiji, self-sufficiency is acid test of basic education. The students must be able to meet the salary of their teachers through the sale of the products of their crafts. The state should pay for the other expenses such as for furniture, books, tools, and school building. The state should provide the marketing facilities for the goods produced in the school. Basic education is self-reliant and self-supporting. Schools as factories or vocational centers. Self-sufficiency, vocational training, liberal education or general education, etc. all are properly correlated. Next, cult of non-violence. Gandhiji wanted the future citizens of this country to be imbued with the ideal of non-violence. Gandhiji said, where the whole atmosphere is redolent with the pure fragrance of ahimsa, that's non-violence, boys and girls studying together will live like brothers and sisters in the freedom and yet in self-imposed restraints. The students will be bound to the teachers in the ties of filial love, mutual respect, and mutual trust. Every act of students, according to Gandhiji, should be accomplished by love. He remarked, we cannot and will not think of exploitation, and we have no alternative but this plan of education which is based on non-violence. Next, ideal of citizenship. Varda's scheme of education encourages cooperation and lays the foundation of ideal citizenship. It will enable the child to discharge his duties and responsibilities of a good citizen. Character of the students would be developed. It will promote warmth, dignity, efficiency, and a sense of social service. Development of desire for doing something for the social development of skills for democratic self-government in school. Next, relation with life. Education in school should be closely related to life activities and problems of children. This is to be achieved through the principles of correlation and integration. Education should help a child in understanding and solving the problems of life. Now, the curriculum. Gandhi's scheme of education is known as Basic Scheme of Education. Its curriculum was activity-centered. This scheme of education aimed at the development of whole man. Gandhiji suggested that teaching of subjects like first basic craft, agriculture, spinning, weaving, woodwork, cardboard work, metal work, gardening, leather work, clay molding, fisheries, poultry, etc. Second, general science. This including nature study, zoology, physiology, hygiene, chemistry, botany and astronomy. Third, social studies including history, geography, civics and current events for promoting individual and social virtues. Fourth, arts including drawing, music and aesthetics. Fifth, physical education including games, etc. Sixth, Hindustani. Hindi should be included as a compulsory subject in the school curriculum for developing national language. Now, the method of teaching. Gandhiji advocated the activity method like learning by doing and learning by self-experience. Method should be fused with matter, that is, education must revolve around vocational and manual activities at the center, and the syllabi should be woven around the vocational training. Education is through the medium of and in correlation with the productive work. Teacher. He wanted the teacher to be the model of behavior, an image of society, a compendium of virtues. He wanted that the teacher should possess knowledge, skill, enthusiasm, patriotism, strong character and special training. He should be friend, philosopher and guide. He should establish heart-to-heart contact with the students. Next, discipline. Gandhiji advocated discipline through self-control. He emphasized the value of self-discipline in life, the discipline that springs from within. Next, textbooks. He believed that the true textbooks for the student is their teacher. He did not want to load the student with innumerable textbooks. He has observed, if I had my way, I would certainly destroy the majority of the present textbooks and encourage textbooks to be written which have bearing on and correspondence with the home life, so that a boy as he learns may react upon his immediate surrounding. Gandhiji's views on textbooks are similar to that of Rousseau. Next, school. The school should be an activity school. It should be situated in a natural atmosphere. As per M.S. Patel, he has observed the school of Gandhi's imagination will not be a place of passive absorption of information imparted second-hand, but will be a place of work, experimentation and discovery, because it will follow an activity curriculum. The child acquires his knowledge actively and utilizes it for the understanding and better control of his social environment. Now we'll discuss the merits of Gandhian scheme of education. Several merits have been claimed to Gandhi's scheme, like it is a pediocentric education, like those of Rousseau, Pestalozzi, Comenius, and Montessori, as it is based on child's needs and interest. It is highly psychological, being related to the child's immediate life. As Dr. Zakir Hussain committee observed, psychologically it is desirable because it relieves the child from the tyranny of the purely academic and theoretical instruction, against which its active nature is making a healthy protest. There is no verbalism, as it is based on an activity and is full of direct experiences. Vocational skills are promoted. Based on the principle of correlation, craft is correlated with knowledge, life, and environment. As whole range of subjects are integrated around a productive activity. Coordination and integration of knowledge is easy. Learning is easy as it is through mother tongue as the medium of instruction. Lastly, co-education is there. Now some demerits of Gandhian scheme of education. Teacher education programs were not perfect. Teachers have no clarity of the concept of basic education. The teachers, the heads, and the others linked with basic education were having no clear-cut idea of crafts and their use as scientific and mechanical methods of teaching in realizing goals of basic education. In practical situation, basic education was not practical and vocational oriented. The implementation part is defective. And lastly, the proper textbooks were not there. So, this is all related to our today's topic, basic education. Hope you have enjoyed and understood. Thank you for watching.